Welcome to Faith Uncovered. Today's exploration digs into one of early Christianity's most mysterious texts, the Sophia of Jesus Christ.
Oh, absolutely. I'm excited to get into that. What's the first noteworthy bit?
So the text was found back in 1945 in Nag Hammadi, Egypt, buried in a sealed jar with 13 papyrus codices. This accidental discovery by Muhammad Ali al-Salman is legendary, as it gave us this trove of early Gnostic writings.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. I mean, finding 13 codices by chance must have been a historic moment.
Indeed. And what's fascinating is that while the codices were written in Coptic, many scholars suggest the original Sophia was composed in Greek around 120-150 CE, so essentially within living memory of the apostles, yet outside the institutional church's control.
Right? It's like this hidden narrative that operated on the margins of early Christianity.
Exactly. And then there's a second version found in the Berlin or Akhmim Codex from the 4th century, which hints at later revisions. Scholars like Bentley Layton and Marvin Meyer argued it was grounded in Scythian Gnosticism, later redacted by Valentinian Christians.
So it's like multiple interpretations layered over time, huh?
Precisely, it's layered like an onion, each version reflecting shifts in theological nuance. Moving on, the text itself is not a narrative gospel. It's a dialogue gospel somewhat similar to the Gospel of Thomas.
Interesting. So rather than recounting stories, it offers a deep philosophical conversation?
Right. Picture this. The resurrected Jesus appears to a wider group than just the 12. It includes figures like Mary Magdalene, Matthew, Judas, Thomas, and Bartholomew. They're initially frightened by his appearance, but then he comforts them with "Peace be with you," and opens up a dialogue on the cosmos, soul, and divine mystery.
That's a whole new take on the resurrection narrative, isn't it? It almost feels like an invitation to question deep mysteries rather than just accepting a story at face value.
Absolutely. In fact, the discourse goes into detailed explanations of concepts like the invisible spirit, which represents the unknowable true God, and Barbelo, who is viewed as the divine feminine first emanation. It also discusses aeons, eternal aspects of the divine mind.
So we're talking about lots of metaphysical cosmology here, almost like a blueprint for understanding existence beyond the material world.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really bold. Sophia herself, the embodiment of wisdom, is depicted as having a role in creating a flawed world. Her error or desire leads to the formation of Yaldabaoth, the ignorant demiurge who arrogantly proclaims, "I am God and there is no other."
Now that's an audacious twist, portraying the creator as not the ultimate divine, but rather a shadow of the true source, all because of a misstep in divine wisdom.
Yep, it upends the conventional view entirely. And instead of emphasizing salvation through blood atonement, Jesus here is meant to restore gnosis, hidden transformative knowledge that awakens one's inner divine spark.
I like that perspective, though I have to ask, don't you think it oversimplifies the traditional doctrine too much? I mean, it's quite a shift from, say, the sacrificial theology that dominated mainstream thought.
That's a fair point. It's a real ideological clash. This claim that salvation comes from one's inner enlightenment rather than through institutional rites really shook the early church.
And speaking of shock, how did the church actually respond to these revelations?
The reaction was intense. Early church figures like Irenaeus condemned these secret teachings as heretical, as dangerous knowledge reserved for only the elect, and later, Tertullian ridiculed them as demonic delusions. By the time Bishop Athanasius issued his festal letter in 367 CE, texts like Sophia were banned and excluded from the New Testament canon.
Whoa, that's a real rejection. It's as if this alternative view directly threatened church structure and authority.
Exactly. By rejecting male-only apostolic succession and the official authority of bishops, Sophia questioned the established order and proposed that true salvation comes through self-knowledge and direct divine experience. This philosophical rebellion is central to its appeal and danger.
And later, modern scholars have reclaimed this text, right?
Yes, indeed. Since its rediscovery, figures like Elaine Pagels, Karen L. King, and April DeConnick have championed Sophia. They've shown how these Gnostic texts represent not just an alternative view of Christianity, but also emphasize a more mystical, inclusive, even feminist spirituality.
Right. I've read that Mary Magdalene has a major voice here, which definitely turns the traditional narrative on its head.
Absolutely. Her prominence in the dialogue highlights early female participation in spiritual leadership, a fact that medieval and patriarchal traditions overshadowed. It's a refreshing perspective that reclaims a long-suppressed narrative.
And then there's this intriguing connection to modern physics. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure, some modern interpreters see striking parallels between Gnostic cosmology and quantum physics. For example, the pleroma, the fullness of divine essence, is likened to the quantum vacuum, a sea of potential from which all forms emerge. And even the
Yeah,
aeons might represent higher dimensions or quantum states.
that's really fascinating. Almost like the mystics of old were intuitively grappling with concepts we now explore in theoretical physics.
Exactly. It's like, the fall of Sophia into matter mirrors the collapse of the wave function in quantum theory, the moment possibilities solidify into reality. Though we got to remember, these are poetic analogies rather than scientific claims.
True, Sean Carroll and others remind us these are symbolic parallels, not empirical theories. It's a beautiful interplay between myth and modern science, but should be taken with a grain of salt.
Right? And it's this very interplay that opens up fascinating questions. Were ancient mystics, through pure intuition, tapping into a multidimensional interconnected reality long before modern physics arrived on the scene?
That's a question that really makes you think, doesn't it? It blurs the line between spirituality and science in a way most texts do not.
Totally. And at its core, the Sophia of Jesus Christ challenges some of the most deeply ingrained doctrines of Western religious thought, questioning the notion of a male-dominated divine, a harsh deity, and the idea of salvation via blood sacrifice. It asserts instead that true salvation is an inner awakening to our divine nature.
You know, that call to inner knowledge almost makes the text feel like an invitation for a spiritual revolution.
Exactly. It's like a rallying cry for those who see Christianity as inherently diverse, mystical and dynamic, rather than static and institutional.
Which, I must say, is a powerful message, especially in today's world where personal spirituality is often key.
Absolutely. And that's why this text remains relevant. It dares to propose that the divine isn't confined to what's been institutionalized, but lived and experienced individually through gnosis, the deep, personal, transformative insight.
Yep.
It challenges us to re-examine our spiritual assumptions.
On that note, do you think these ancient ideas offer potential for today's spiritual seekers? Or are they just, ancient fan fiction?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. I'd argue they serve as an intellectual and spiritual provocation, a way to question established narratives and consider a more personal relationship with the divine. It's not about rewriting science or dogma, but rather inviting us to look deeper into the nature of existence.
I appreciate that perspective. It's a respectful challenge to tradition and a reminder that sometimes the quest for truth is as much about questioning as it is about believing.
Exactly right. And for those out there who find excitement in these mysteries, it's a call to engage, debate, and most importantly, keep exploring the depths of our spiritual heritage.
Yeah, well said. And to our listeners, if this journey into the Sophia of Jesus Christ sparked your curiosity, share your thoughts and keep the conversation alive.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in, and let's continue uncovering these hidden layers of our past and maybe our future.